Good morning, dear learners. In this masterclass, we are suggested using integrated skills in teaching ESP students on the theme Unintended Consequences. We'll begin this lesson with a Chinese proverb, 1,000 teachers, 1,000 methods. In teaching, integrated approach helps to build new knowledge and skills on to what students already know and can do. So, if students are able to read a short story, this skill will help them to write their own story. Instead of just having listening, the students can have speaking, reading, and writing practice. What is an integrated lesson? The first characteristics of the teacher, the learner, the setting, and the relevant language. The second, primary skills of listening, reading, speaking, and writing. How to integrate skills? There could be three ways of approaching this. The first, integration within same medium. It may be oral and written. We have two skills, receptive and productive skills. Receptive skills are listening and reading. Productive skills are speaking and writing. And the second, integrating between mediums. In the third one, complex integration. A series of activities that uses variety of skills, making sure that one activity is closely linked thematically to the next one. Let's compare segregation and integration. We have two tables, in the first segregation and the second integration. Segregation presents language skills as divisible and divorced from each other, and in integration presents language skills as interlocked exactly as they are in everyday life. Segregation restricts language to a very narrow, non-communicative range, and in integration links the language skills for the purpose of real, authentic communication. Segregation focuses on the language itself, the language-based approach, and in integration focuses on the whole language. And the last one, segregation is traditional approach, for example, grammar translation method based on. And the integration is modern approach, for example, content-based instruction and task-based instruction. How we can organize integrated skills instruction? It has two types, content-based language instruction and task-based instruction. In content-based instruction, students practice all the language skills in a highly integrated, communicative fashion while learning content such as science, mathematics, and social studies. Content-based language instruction is valuable at all levels of proficiency, but the nature of the content might differ by proficiency level. For beginners, the content often involves basic social and interpersonal communication skills, but past the beginning level, the content can become increasingly academic and complex. In task-based instruction, basic pair work and group work are often used to increase students' interaction and collaboration. For instance, students work together to write and edit a class newspaper, develop a television commercial, enact scenes from a play, or take part in other joint tasks. Finally, the integrated skills approach, whether found in content-based or task-based language instruction or some hybrid form, can be highly motivating to students of all ages and backgrounds. In order to integrate the language skills in ESL, EFL instruction, teachers should consider taking these steps. Learn more about the various ways of integrate language skills in the classroom. They are based on content-based, task-based, or a combination. Reflect on their current approach and evaluate the extent to which the skills are integrated. Choose instructional materials, textbooks, and technologies that promote the integration of listening, reading, speaking, and writing, as well as the associated skills of syntax, vocabulary, and so on. Even if a given course is labeled according to just one skill, remember that it is possible to integrate the other language skills through appropriate tasks. The last one, teach language learning strategies and emphasize that a given strategy can often enhance performance in multiple skills. Let's use these instructions on the theme unintended consequences. In the social sciences, unintended consequences, sometimes unanticipated consequences or unforeseen consequences, are outcomes of purposeful action that are not intended or foreseen. The term was popularized in the 20th century by American sociologist Robert K. Merton. The lesson begins warm-up questions. What kind of inventions which discovered by human do you know? Second, can you remember any other human deeds which brought to tragic but unintended consequences? What can we do to save our planet? Students respond their own replies. All kind of response we can adapt. And the second activity, we can change warm-up questions and look at the following photos and try to guess a general message. Students can find the words of picture name. They'll think 1 minute and we can give possible response. The first, an atom. The second, plants and factories. The third, the opium for medicine. The fourth, satellites, spacecrafts. Activity 1, it begins writing. Work in groups of 4 or 5. Think and write some inventions or discoveries of humanity in history which brought unintended consequences. Students draw a table. In the first, a popular inventions and discoveries. They write a popular invention and discovery or an event. And the second table, it is consequences, unintended consequences. For example, an atom, its consequence, a terrifying weapon, atom bomb. Students do this activity in the group, and then I give a possible response. Plants and factories. It is unintended consequences, air and water pollution. The third, the opium for medicine. It is unintended consequences, drug addiction and narcolepsy. The fourth, satellites, spacecrafts. It is unintended consequences, destruction of ozone layer and appearance of ozone hole. Activity 2, speaking. Students work with vocabulary. They match the words 1 to 13 with the appropriate definitions A to M. Students find their own response. After that, I'll give them a real response. To harm, it means to hurt someone or damage something. To alter, to change something usually slightly or to cause characteristics of something to change. To exploit, to use something for advantage. Harvest, the time of year when crops are cut and collected from the fields. A sparrow, a small gray-brown bird which is especially common in towns. To launch, to begin something such as a plan or introduce something new such as a product. Exhaustion, condition of extremely being tired. Extinct, to eat or drink especially lot of something. Starvation, the state of having no food for a long period, often causing death. To swarm, when insects come together in a large group. A yield, an amount of something positive such as food or profit that is produced or supplied. To consume, to eat or drink especially a lot of something. To curb, to control or limit something that is not wanted. We must remember our classes are multi-level students. Some students' knowledge is pre-intermediate and some students' level is elementary or beginner. That's why some students cannot answer with a definition. That's why we'll give the words translation. The next activity is listening. Listen to the tape and fill in the blanks with appropriate words and phrases.
Lesson 2. Unintended Consequences.
Good morning, dear listeners. Today again we are in the radio program. When people want to have more change in their lives, by a wish to make it happier, they try to experiment something extraordinary or even incorrect, unnatural, which may sometimes bring to different disasters. Those issues can be done by not wanting to damage nature or social structure, but anyway, those faults may harm some spheres in life, society. Not being aware of negative, harmful consequences, they can change a lot of things to worse. Today, we are going to speak about a terrible event when a human being's interruption in environmental issue altered the whole ecosystem of the region. People think that nature should be fully exploited by humans for production purposes. But the story to be told today, we hope, will be a lesson for what can happen when changes are made to an ecosystem. We invited Mrs. Park Lee, a professor in history at the Chinese State University of Diplomacy. Good morning, Mrs. Lee.
Good morning.
Mrs. Lee, would you like to tell the whole tragic story happened in China to our listeners?
Oh, sure. Just now, let me remember. It was in 1957. No. It was in 1958 the Chinese farmers had less harvest than it was expected. They reasoned that sparrows ate grain seeds. The country was particularly suffering from sparrow. Chinese scientists calculated that each sparrow consumed 4.5 kilograms of grain annually.
Wow!
Yeah, that meant every million sparrows were eating food which could feed 60,000 people. On hearing that information, Chinese leader Mao Zedong ordered the extermination of sparrows. This was a shockingly irresponsible idea for the ecosystem, you know. He didn't want to discuss his plan or listen to experts.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was awful. Mao launched the Great Sparrow Campaign to solve the problem. To accomplish this task, Chinese citizens were mobilized in massive numbers to eradicate the birds by forcing them to fly until they fell from exhaustion. On December 13, yes, it was that the tragic day, from the early morning, the birds were terrorized by Chinese people who took to the streets clenching their pots and pans or beating drums to prevent them from landing.
Oh.
Nests were torn down, eggs were broken, chicks killed, and sparrows were shot down from the sky. By 8 p.m. of that night, it was estimated that a total of about 200,000 sparrows were killed.
Oh my God!
Yeah, as a result of these efforts, the sparrow became nearly extinct in China. And that's when the problem started. A large type of grasshopper, mainly tropical called locust populations occurred. They swarmed the countryside as there were no sparrows in sight. And without the sparrows to curb the insect population, the crop's productivity reduced drastically in a way far worse than if birds had been allowed to hang around. Consequently, agricultural yields that year were disastrously low. Rice production in particular was hit the hardest.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, by April of 1960, it started to become painfully obvious to the Chinese leaders that the sparrows, in addition to eating grains, ate insects. On the advice of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Mao declared full stop to the Great Sparrow Campaign. But it was very late. The damage was done and the situation got progressively worse. The overflow of insects, plus the added effect of widespread deforestation and misuse of poisons, were a significant contributor to the Great Chinese Famine. In 1958, I think, till 1961, in which an estimated, can you imagine, 30 million people died of starvation. Things got so bad that the Chinese government started importing sparrows from other countries.
Oh, from your story, we can see that human disturbed into environmental issues brought so many disasters. It brought tragic unintended consequences to the whole country. Humanity did a lot of mistakes in past, but they should serve us as a good lesson. Thank you for your attention.
After listening, students should appropriate words to the text. Then, activity 4, they do reading. Read the text attentively and prepare to discuss. Because of every words put in appropriate words. After that, students discuss the text. And at the end of the lesson, students watch the video about Chinese farmers. In the videos, subtitles we have given in this text. After that, students discuss this video. In this lesson, we'll try to explain unintended consequences to the ESP learners. If it is fruitful for you, we are very glad. Thank you for your attention.